We are Age Rich because we create remedies for life made by life. I'm Scarlett Vesper, aka Mrs. V, and founder of AgeRich.co, your go-to place for age rich remedies to help you find love, get rich, awaken your intuition, and feel free. So now let's open the remedy kit and discover why we're all age rich. So what is the artist remedy? I know for myself, I consider myself an artist. I write, I draw, I sing, I do art in my creations for branding. And I consider we're all creative and artists in our own life, whatever that may be. But what I've learned and what I want to share with you is my remedy as an artist would be to, number one, stay in your own lane. So often we compare ourselves, and I know when I'm scrolling through social media or I'm looking at different designs in different platforms, I go, oh, so amazing. How can I do anything like that? Or, oh my goodness. And in fact, I get an overwhelm because there is so much good stuff. And I think, well, what value is mine going to bring? I mean, it's just one thing. Why bother? You know, etc. The brain and the natter in the I'm not good enough comes up. And so I've just learnt what works is to stay in my own lane, is to not compare and to see it as just a full self-expression that one person does make a difference. And whoever that is for, whoever experiences it, might be yourself, could be just a family friend, whoever sees it and feels that sense of expression and love and whatever it is for you, whatever emotion, that's enough. And number two is to keep moving. I know that sometimes when I sit down to do a project, I just don't know where to start. And sometimes we can just walk away and go, look, it's too big. Where do I start? I just start by moving in some way. There'll be a doorway that you can go through. My doorway is I start looking at images. I'll scroll through and I'll find an image. Or if I'm doing branding, I'll just look through fonts or I look through other people's work. I just keep moving and I'll see something I like and I start playing with it. So see how there's a kind of a flow feeling that forms. And because if you think about the big picture, often there's an overwhelm. But if you start small and just see it as like a doorway into the space that you're going to, that normally never fails. And then number three is to allow yourself processing space. I think, you know, for me, who's a doer, I think that's been a big one, is to actually sit in the space of allowing myself the time to formulate. Because what we forget is when we create something, whatever it is, it actually begins to form its own entity, its own energy, its own life force, and you have to give it time to build. So even the act of owning and articulating that first sentence of I'm going to do this, or I am going to create this artwork or this project or this business, whatever you're creating, that will set it off in motion. So you have to keep moving it, yes, but you also have to allow it to form its space and come up with its own kind of identity. It's kind of a miracle what happens. So yeah, give it some time, some processing time as well. So that's my artist remedy that I formed from my own lifetime. So I hope that helps. And I'm so excited now to introduce Tim Olsen to you, founder of Olsen Gallery. We've known each other for a long time, and it's just been a joy to see how who he is as a person has grown in being able to kind of share with the world who he is and his incredible point of view on art and on artists. I mean, he is the ultimate artist coach, really, because he sees all. So without further ado, here is Tim Olsen and myself talking about the artist remedy. So Tim, tell me, what is your life remedy? You know, you've lived a life so far up to now. What would you advise to people? What have you learnt? What's your life remedy?
I think really life's remedy was obviously not to really concern yourself with the opinion of others, but I think to be more centred. And it often comes naturally with age, but I think when I basically stopped drinking, started meditating, and started realising that really I was in charge of everything myself, and that most of the perceptions that I had in regard to what was happening to me in life was really my responsibility, and really that I had to change my attitude that life was actually happening for me, not to me.
Oh, I love that, because it is. It's like you get your power back.
Yeah. That to be virtuous is to realise that even the harsh lessons, are great experiences in regard to you becoming a better person, and learning how to deal with things, how to cohabitate with other people, even if they're difficult. But to change the fact that it gets back to the cliches of gratitude. That I wake up every day and I go, wow, look what I've got, and it's not necessarily to do with assets. It's to do with the integration of interesting people and just being able to live a lifestyle. It's not really to do with money. It's to do with being able to enjoy life from the point of view of it never being boring. And I think my greatest fear in life has always been boredom.
Oh, really? I never knew that about you. We go back a long time. And
we do.
And what I've loved about you and seeing who you are is you are actually very spiritual, which is where we also meet too, in that discussion around life and working on ourselves and evolving who we are and learning from it. I did know about the boring thing. So what do you do with that? Like, how do you work with that part?
Well, I don't believe in the word being spiritual.
Right.
Yeah, you are spiritual or you're not. I mean, I get really, really sceptical when someone says I'm really spiritual, because it's like, sex. If you have to talk about sex, obviously you're not getting it. Those that don't talk about it generally are. So spirituality is a sense of being and how you behave and how you conduct yourself, how you basically maintain a kind of demure, I suppose, indifference to chaos and how you contain yourself. My mother was an amazing woman in the sense that she was very spiritual but never talked about being spiritual. But whenever I was stressed or ever I had a problem in my life and I was upset about something, she'd always say, just think Eastern. And that in itself sort of conjured up Confucius and a kind of that sort of Zen thing, which is in other words that and it also gets back to what Seneca said, who was the great Roman philosopher, who was Marcus Aurelius' advisor, who said that the best way to deal with anger is with delay.
Ah, yes, perfect. Yeah.
Because by the time you get round to being angry, if you delay it, you're not angry at all.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I never thought about that point of view, because you don't talk about it in that way. I mean, you live it. And, I'm the same, hopefully, even though I do my work on advertising and what I'm doing in that realm, I don't talk about it, I just live it in how I do it with my clients, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do you bring that into, we're going to talk about the artist remedy. You have worked with so many. I mean, obviously you're born with one, your dad. But what's a remedy for them? What would you say to an artist?
Well, I think essentially the true home for an artist is in the studio. There are artists who are obviously very good self-promoters, who know how to do the dance. Like Brett Whiteley is the rock star. My father is the Spanish matador. They were very good at. They're very good at being able to sort of create this theatrical kind of persona, which. I mean, I've met people who didn't like my father's work, and then the minute they meet him, they go, "Oh, it's fabulous," because somehow, really, the artwork is a byproduct of the person. Of course, there's skills and there's talent and ability that's required to be able to make interesting art, but the person often is the icing on the cake in regard to understanding where it all comes from. That sort of the cover that that then reaches back into the depth and substance of what the artwork is, and it begins with the person in most cases and ends with the person.
It's like they're storytellers of their own life.
Like the storytellers, yeah, and really the artwork is a reflection of the inner narrative.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So what would you say to an artist? Like, what do you think is their biggest challenge, and what is a remedy for them to help them?
Look, really and truly, the best artists I've ever known have been avid readers, lovers of poetry. And an artist, when my father was a young man, he lived in Mallorca, and he arrived there basically with a suitcase, and he started, collecting glasses in the local restaurant and plates, sort of worked as a busboy and worked his way up to being one of the sous chefs there. And but he befriended Robert Graves, the famous poet and writer and historian, who wrote I Claudius and what have you. And he was a much older man, and he loved my father because he was so charming and was able to sort of, get the Swedish backpackers up to Robert Graves' house up on the hill. And there was a lot of debauchery and bacchanalia, of course.
Yeah.
But Robert Graves was a brilliant man, and he said to my father, "Look, young John, you can paint pretty pictures all your life, but unless you embrace poetry and literature and develop metaphor, you're never going to really grow much further. You can paint pretty landscapes all your life, but they'll never have much more." So it really changed my father's life to really start being interested in how other people think, which is really the greatest act of humility, is to be interested in how other people think, whether it be through music or poetry or reading or theatre or any form of the arts. The arts is a mechanism by which, or a vehicle by which we get off ourselves and start realising more about how we feel and think through the thinking and feeling of others.
Oh, I love that. It is a great form of learning empathy, I think, which is so needed today.
Absolutely.
I know before you've said to me when we were having a conversation about, artists, and you mentioned that one of the issues that is a big one for them is that they kind of find it hard to find success or to be with success. How do you help them through that?
Yeah, well, it's like what Oscar Wilde once said, it's often worse to be ruined by praise than destroyed by criticism. And I've seen so many artists come undone, particularly after winning the Archibald Prize.
Oh, wow.
Here we are in the week of the Archibald Prize, and we know damn well that, it's sort of like the whole country stops, or the whole art world stops, just like the whole country stops for the Melbourne Cup, The announcement of the Archibald is like when everyone takes a deep breath and goes, who's going to win? Because really it is, it's like the Melbourne Cup. Every horse eats from the same, from the same bale of hay, and essentially it's a chook raffle. It's not so much judged by artists; it's judged by trustees, and not necessarily people who are art experts, but portraiture holds a constant fascination. And but I've seen so many artists come undone after winning the Archibald.
So what is it? Is it almost like the same thing around winning lotto? I suppose it's that thing of people having to learn to understand how to be with success, or that they're enough, or all their stuff comes up. What do you see? You see them come up, you bring them on and you help them because you're amazing at that. And I know you have loyal artists that stick with you because you have led them that pathway, which they've managed. What do you coach to them when they get to that point of starting to work and they're a bit kind of off kilter? What do you say?
I'm really, how do you politely say put your ego in your back pocket? Leave your ego at the front door.
Yeah.
It's artists are very, very, very volatile people and fragile people, and extremely vulnerable. And to work and to be an artist is to confront yourself every day. If you're a true artist and you're working from a place of truth, it's very, very confronting. It's It's an occupation that requires you to really dig deep, and you don't always like what you see. It's a job where it requires incredible introspection, and even though you might just be looking at a landscape or a still life or a figure or creating some form of abstraction, it's a kind of personal interrogation, not just what you are doing in regard to creating something that is perceived on a two-dimensional surface in regard to painting or three-dimensional sculpture or even through photography. But I think the longer I've been in this business, the more I realise that art is not just about seeing, it's also about feeling. And often I have to address the emotions of an artist and the feelings of an artist, more so than their technique or what they're doing, or whether they're using the right colours or whatever. I mean, I'm not someone to tell someone what to paint, but basically you've got to constantly massage them, tell them that what they're doing has meaning, has substance, has purpose, and that really the way they do things is really unique to them, and what it is quite magnificent. I think it's very courageous to be an artist. It's very noble to be an artist. I mean, what else have we got when we look through history? When we start with the early, artists that, before Christ, the early civilizations through Egypt, through Rome, right throughout history, what have we got left that really tells us about those people? It's their artwork.
That is so amazing, because, I mean, I totally see you as an artist coach. Like, I can feel that, because when, as an artist, and I do as an artist, but not this stuff, but in other ways, and I know what comes up is that fear of being criticised, fear of exposing yourself, and it is a hard journey, because you're always battling and balancing. Do I do that? Is that okay? What will people think? And I don't want to be like them. I mean, it's just a head spin.
No, completely.
And so, I totally see, because you're seeing everything from behind and above, and it's an amazing position for you, because you can see where they need to go. Is there any other thing that you tell them or that you share to help them into that place? Because it's like you're coaching them on a whole life being in that space. Yeah.
I often say to an artist, what are you reading at the moment? But really the thing to say to them is, don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah.
I mean, every artist has a bad haircut day, It's a situation where you've got to work through it. And we often, in the art world, or in the act of creativity throughout history, we talk about the Muse. And the Muse is the goddess of creativity. There's got that great painting called The Three Muses by Botticelli, and Titian. It's really a thing where, if you believe in the spiritual aspect of creativity, I think artists are really channelers. They're vehicles for some larger sense of spirit, or some spirit, or past spirits. It could be multiple spirits. I truly believe my father is a kind of, or channels, or is a conduit for someone like Rubens, perhaps. Because often he paints things and he doesn't understand where it comes from. And I end up telling him things about what he's done. And he said, yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh.
But I didn't realise that is what I was doing.
Amazing.
And it's like that with a lot of artists. I really do believe that there's something intangible involved with the creative process. But the Muse only visits you when you have everything in place. And it comes through a lot of hard work, a lot of repetition, lots of failures. When an artist tells me that they've failed, this last painting they did failed, I said, well, that's fantastic, because then you know how to fix it. But I really believe that the Muse only visits those that are basically working from a place of selflessness, integrity, passion, and really from a place of sincerity, where they're not thinking about who's going to look at the picture, they're not thinking about who they can sell it to and how much they can get for it. All those things, damn, or I would, in a sense, say bad karma towards the great intangible masterpiece. To tell the artist that really just stop being overly conscious about what you're doing, forget everything you think you know, and just do it. And they've come back to me a month later and said, Tim, you're absolutely right. I just decided I didn't care about money anymore, and I didn't give a shit about what so-and-so thought, whether it be an art critic or my wife or my husband. And suddenly the magic happened.
It's so beautiful. It's actually very similar with acting, because when you do an acting course, and I mean, I'm a director, but I've done an acting course to find out what it was like, and it is personal development. It's personal development because you have to, as you say, face yourself every day and be truthful and sit in the presence of that. Well, I think you're, if I was an artist and going to do it, you'd be an amazing person to come and do that with, because your knowledge is so beautiful. Like, you have all sides of it. So I think anyone who's been with you and in the gallery is blessed.
I wish they realised it more.
They will, don't you worry.
Yeah, no, I'm very proud of what I've achieved and very proud of my artists.
Yeah, well done. And well, thank you.
My pleasure. And thank you for reminding me of all those things that I'd forgotten about.
Yeah, well, that's the idea, and what I love about Age Rich is about that we have such a rich life of experiences, and we have these beautiful wisdoms. And I've certainly, of anybody actually, that has shown itself really prominently, I think, with your book and watching on Australian Story, and, like, you've had the confidence to kind of really show who you are. And in that in itself is an artist and what you're doing. So I think you're a great illustration of that.
Well, never be afraid of who you are.
That's it.